And we're live. Hi. Welcome to Pregnant Possibilities. I am Jeanne Schumacher, co-founder of the Pregnancy Advantage, and my partner in crime today is Dr. Debra Shapiro. She is a board-certified OBGYN, and today we're going to be talking about, we're going to discuss the toxins that we're being exposed to and what they can do to us and our future children. So, Doc, how's it going?
Very well. How's it going for you? You're in
Great.
Cape Cod, right?
I am on
Say
Cape Cod.
on Cape Cod.
Yes,
Wonderful.
love it.
It
Love it.
must be beautiful.
It is so
Fantastic.
gorgeous. So
Yeah,
gorgeous.
I
So,
envy you. Cool. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about toxins because it seems like from the end of, probably even before, but certainly from the end of World War II, and to some extent even after World War I, our government started using a lot of chemicals to help accelerate the growth of fruits and vegetables and foods, and make our animals grow, our farm animals grow bigger as well. And some of these chemicals are also a byproduct of our mining industries. But a lot of the chemicals did come out of chemical warfare, actually. It was sort of a peacetime putting these chemicals to use. So it's very sad. And of course, early on, this was before anyone had really been thinking possibly about organic farming or even veganic farming as a way to produce food for the world. So they actually, I'm sure people really felt that this was, there was a need to mass produce food, especially food for animals that we were raising. And so we had to lay on the pesticides and the herbicides and the fungicides pretty thick. So these chemicals, some of these chemicals are, a lot of them are persistent in our environment. We call them POPs, or persistent organic pollutants, and they can accumulate up the food chain, and we're sort of at the top of the food chain, and so they accumulate in us as well, and they have terrible effects. Now, some of these chemicals, some of the things that we're going to be talking about, these environmental toxins, some of them are actually known endocrine disrupting chemicals, or EDCs. Endocrine disrupting chemicals are exogenous chemicals that interfere on any level with our own hormones, with the hormone receptors. They can turn them on, they can turn them off, they can interfere with our genetics, they can have epigenetic effects where they actually cause genes to be expressed or to be suppressed. They can have an effect on your ovaries, on the eggs as they're being developed, even before ovulation. So they can have far-reaching effects down the line. So let's talk about them, because a big part of this program of the Pregnancy Advantage not only is about eating a whole plant food diet, which eliminates a lot of toxins that we'll talk about, but it's also about reducing the toxin load, because these endocrine disrupting chemicals have effects on your fetus. They have effects on your pregnancy. They have effects on the developing fetus. They have the effects on the health of your child and your grandchildren down the line. So I don't think there's any other program. I'm not even sure there are a lot of gynecologists out there that are really talking about this, but I wanted to give you some background. So the first thing I'm going to talk about are some heavy metals, and in particular, mercury, because this is actually what started all of this for me. Was that I had a patient who came to me, who's well known to me, but she had miscarried, and she told me that it was felt when she went to see a specialist in San Francisco, whose name is Dr. Hightower, who will try to get her on soon, who's an expert in mercury, that it was her extremely high mercury level that had led to this miscarriage. And at the time, I was just going along in my practice, was not thinking about mercury at all. And I was also moving from eating more of a meat-heavy diet to more of a in-between fish-heavy diet on my way to becoming vegetarian and then later vegan. But I was stopping at the fish, and I was eating a lot of fish. It's very easy to have, to grab those, these grab-and-goes sushi for lunch, and sometimes have a tuna fish sandwich, which I was raised on. I went to school every single day with a tuna fish sandwich, which you would never do with your child now, probably coming from cans that were lined in BPA, so that's another one. So I thought everything was fine, but when I learned about her symptoms, it actually made me think that I was having symptoms at that time, and I was. I had sort of a chronic low-grade headache. My low back sort of ached. I didn't really know why. We always think maybe it's just something we're doing, but I had this low-grade backache. But most importantly, my memory was not the same. And it was subtle, but it was recognizable. There are certain words that I would be using all the time in my practice. I would be talking to patients about hormone replacement therapy. I would be talking to them about birth control pills. And there would be certain words and names of drugs that would have to be coming to me very, very quickly that I would always be talking about. And suddenly I was having trouble recalling the names of some of these drugs that I'd be talking about multiple times a day. And this was very odd. So I had my mercury level checked and it was actually up to 14. And when I later talked to Dr. Hightower, she was telling me that really before people get pregnant, you really want as little of this heavy metal in your body as possible. And you really want the level to be less than 4, but I was up to 14. The half-life is 100 days. So after 3 months, I got it down to 7. And after 3 more months, it was, much lower. And I moved over to being whole plant food, vegan diet. But what I did learn also is that even though I see women and I test them before they get pregnant, or maybe at the beginning of their pregnancy and their level is high, their level will go down because it comes out in your stool. Some chemicals go out in your urine, some go out in your stool, but the baby, the fetus that's developing will see that same level that you had at the beginning of your pregnancy until the baby can produce stool, the meconium. So this is very concerning. And I'm sure I was the only OBGYN that was actually routinely talking to women about their fish intake and measuring mercury levels and, having that conversation with people when their mercury levels were high, which was very hard, which was sort of hard to do. So mercury is a neurotoxin and it's going to be affecting the brain of the fetus. And, we sometimes we think that it can be leaching out of your fillings, but it's actually less likely. Those are very, very stable. And actually, if you decide that your levels are high and you can't get them down by your diet, and you think it really is coming from your fillings, having them removed and replaced, that is a time of a big load into your system. So I'd be concerned. That's something that you really have to think about with some concern. But just moving away from seafood, and what's interesting is that ACOG actually still recommends, because of the importance of the essential fatty acid omega-3s for the fetal brain, that you eat at least 2 servings of fatty fish a week. But I'd be concerned about that now because our waterways are quite contaminated, and farm fish are really no better. We'll talk about later with some of the other dioxins and PCBs that are carcinogens and endocrine disrupting chemicals that are in farm fish. But in wild caught fish, you have the problems of our waterways just being basically toxic dumps. They have been for a long, long time. So there's these heavy metals as well. And a lot of these come from mining as well, when we were mining. So that's mercury. There are other heavy metals like arsenic, which we should talk about. So arsenic is important because it's in rice, and you can actually look up on some of the, I think Gregor talks about it in some of his nutritionfacts.org videos, but you can look up the arsenic in different rice products. I know at least on the Lundberg site, if you get rice from other countries, rice from India or Pakistan or Nepal, that will have a lower arsenic level. But the problem is that rice is now being grown in areas of the country that used to grow cotton. And arsenic was in some of I think it was probably a pesticide so it's on the soil. So that's how arsenic actually gets into feed, that gets into our chickens. But rice it's definitely an issue. We can talk about how to cook rice in a way to reduce the arsenic in it. I wouldn't feed your child rice cereal. I mean, that used to be a staple. You have to be careful or be aware of it. Arsenic. So I wouldn't drink rice milk, for example, also, and even look at products that might have brown rice syrup, because they can also have higher levels of arsenic. So I think that might be all I have to say about heavy metals at the moment. There are other heavy metals, aluminum, for example, that's in products that we use. I had a patient the other day who wanted to use something called Drysol, which I didn't even know that existed, but Drysol is just aluminum that you would put under your arms if you suffer from excessive sweating. And I don't think that's very safe. Aluminum is associated with Alzheimer's, and it can be absorbed, and it is absorbed. But we went over the risks and the benefits, and she felt that this was still important to do. I find that there are lots of deodorants that don't have aluminum in them and are and work just fine. My odor, well, I know this is off the subject, but my body odor, I think, really changed when I became vegan. So, right. So I think most people have noticed that, and I haven't had the same issues. But there are definitely there are conditions where people are sweating profusely. There are people who have something called hyperhidrosis, where they actually have their hands are really almost dripping and their feet, and that could be treated in various ways. But just putting aluminum, just like growing up and having talcum powder putting on you, and now we know that talcum, there was silica, was it silica? There was something in the talcum that could lead to certain kinds of female cancers. So we're going to be teaching you how to avoid some of these chemicals. And of course, you will eliminate a lot of them by eating an organic whole plant food diet. But even organic produce, they can use water that came from fracking. So you can actually have some heavy metals that are in your vegetables, even when you get organic. And that's why people are talking about veganic gardening. I think that may be a little bit different, but yes, that's still an issue. We live in a very toxic world. And that's why I don't want people to go crazy with this. You just have to do your best, or do what you can. Just do what you can. There may be small things that you can do that will reduce the toxin load, but it's not your fault. You didn't create this problem, but we are living in it now, and we have to do our best for the next generations.
I can't say enough about what everything you said, spot on. So let me just back up for a second, because it's the chemistry teacher in me that, I gotta, it comes out, I can't help it. But, the term heavy metals, applies to a group of metals, that have similar properties. Some of these include like copper, iron, zinc. And you're like, wait. But don't I need copper, iron, zinc? That's those are micronutrients. And I'm like, yeah, you do. But here's the thing. There is this, and we have this mentality as a society that if a little is good, bring on the dump truck. Beep, beep, and back it up and dump this load in. And this is part of the problem that we're facing, is that we are doing this. And so what our body does, and there's two types of chemicals that our body is dealing with, basically. One is fat soluble and one is water soluble. And if it's water soluble, your body still has to process it, but it goes through, liver, kidneys, and then out through your urine. But if it's fat soluble, it's going into your fat cells. And so what your body does to protect itself is very much like an oyster. And when you think about an oyster, it opens up its shell, and then sometimes sand gets in there, and it's like, and it can't go spit the sand out, or, pick it out and say, yeah, this is not good. So what it does is it creates a protective layer, and each day it puts another layer of this material around that grain of sand to make it less annoying or disturbing to the organism. And that's kind of what our body is doing, is protecting us from these fats. And so what's happening is that these fat pockets now become these dumps, these toxic dumps. And so we want to be really, really careful, because definite correlation between heavy metals and Alzheimer's. And so what's happening, in the beginning, you get these fat pockets, they call them beta amyloid plaques. You get these fat pockets inside of your brain. And in the beginning, you can create a pathway around it. But when you get so many of these plaques, it's like you can't get to whatever that memory is. And that's why you start to find yourself going, what was the name of that? I can't think of the name of that. Wow, that was it. And then eventually you just can't remember who you are, and basic living skills, which is scary. I watched my mother-in-law go through that for 7 years, which was, and just apart from that, I mean, the financial, just watching the devastation to this lovely woman, and then to see the cost. She went into a nursing home at $4,000 a month, okay, not in a major city, and it had to be paid for out of pocket. And by the time she was done, 7 years later, she passed, she was up to $9,000 a month for her care. Okay. I don't know about you, but I'm not putting aside money for when I go into the nursing home, and I don't want to. I want to be living life right up until the day I pass from this planet. and I want to have my CPU still in place. So you really have to be careful. And I think that's one of the reasons why, like vitamins, as for older people, they started taking those, micronutrients out, like the copper, the zinc, that kind of thing. So they started taking those out. So we're starting to see this relationship. But there's other things like lead, which was a huge thing. And here's an interesting story. People that I know, they bought this beautiful home in Brooklyn and they gutted it. And, they restored, the whole thing. And it's beautiful. And they had this little microscopic backyard. And she was like, I want to grow some tomatoes. So she went and had the soil tested. If she had grown those tomatoes in that soil, she would have gotten lead poisoning.
Wow.
Okay. And the reason why, here's why, is because all the cars had leaded gasoline for so long that in the city, it didn't really have any place to go. So it's, settled on the soil. And then if you grew anything in that, then, you would have gotten exposed, and of course we had the lead in the paint, and we started to see the kids, that were eating, because the lead is sweet. It tastes sweet. And so you started to eat it, the little kids, because everything goes in their mouth. And they were eating paint chips, like in the development and projects, from paint that had been painted in 1925 that had a lot of lead in it. So, the babies were eating the paint chips and, getting lead poisoning and severe amounts of it. So you can, you have these metals that are causing a lot of reactions. And you saw this, firsthand in your body. But I also want to, touch base on what you said about the deodorant, okay? Because you shouldn't be using an antiperspirant / deodorant. You should just be using a deodorant. I want to make that clear, because an antiperspirant, anti means against, and perspirant means perspire. So what it's doing is literally you're putting a chemical in your body or on your body that will clog your pores so you can't sweat. Houston, do you think that's going to cause a problem? Yes, it is going to cause a problem, especially when you've got a lot of, for women, some major, glands and things that are right there underneath your armpit. And I want to share with you, you want to be careful. And even they're very good at what I call the smoke and mirrors. Okay. And I just want to share with you that a girlfriend, she came over, she's, I got to come over and show you this. And I'm like, oh, okay. So she popped over and she pulled up her arm, and her armpit was like on fire. And I'm like, oh my God, what are you using? And she's like, oh, I got this from, we have a local health food store. And I said, so it's okay. And I said, oh, let's start and let's talk about what you just said right there. Let's analyze that statement, because when you start to look at the chemicals, even if it's in a health food store, just because it's in a health food store doesn't mean it's going to be healthy for you. Okay. Because there's a lot of marketing and smoke and mirrors. And I looked at the deodorant that she had bought, and it said on the front, no, aluminum chlorohydrate. It had no parabens, no this, no that, no that. And there was like 25 things. And she's like, this is good, right? And I turned it around and I looked, and the first ingredient was aluminum. And I said, you do know that this contains aluminum? And she's like, no, it doesn't. It says right here, right here. And I said, let's be clear. It says there's no aluminum chlorohydrate. There are about 100 different salts of aluminum. Okay. So they just used a different one. So again, it's smoke and mirrors. And what they did is they wrote on the back of it, potassium alum. They used the common name. Okay. And in parentheses wrote mineral salts. And I pointed this out to her, and I said, this is short for potassium aluminum silicate. And she went, oh my God. I mean, and the light bulb went on in her. And she's someone who is very, very caring about what she puts on her body and what she eats. She was just horrified. And I said, well, that's what's causing your rash right there. I mean, her arm underneath her armpit was so like, I can't even believe how the skin was just so aggravated. It was like, it looked like it was on fire. And so you just got to be careful, about this. And so I just want to point out, there is the Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, which has two databases. And one is called the, cosmetic database. And it's not just cosmetics. It's shampoo, deodorant, toothpaste, all the basic things that you use on a day-to-day basis. And they rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the best, 10 being the worst. And they, it's a good place to start. Let's leave it at that, because I don't agree with all of the recommendations that they have, because here's why. Like, they'll give you a product and they'll say, overall, we're rating this as a 1, which is the best. But then you start to look down at the ingredients, and some of the ingredients might have a rating of a 3 or a 4. And it's like, wait, you're telling me that this is, this ingredient is toxic, it has a higher toxic load, but you're telling me overall that this has a rating of a 1. I don't understand that. So, it's a good place to start. And they do have an app called Healthy Living. Okay. And it's free. I like free. You can download it for your phone. And what you do is, before you go to buy it, whatever you're going to buy, you take a picture of it, of the barcode. And if it's in their database, it'll connect you to the database right then and there, so you can make an educated decision on the spot. Okay. Now, I went to go get my hair, where I get my hair, the poof cut. And this one guy's been cutting my hair for like 10 years. And so it's in the mall, and outside the front, they've got all kinds of shampoos and conditioners and all kinds of other things. And he was busy, he was running behind. So I had like 10 minutes, and me being me, so I got my phone out. And so I started looking at the barcodes. Well, the first thing they did in the store is they put every price tag where?
Over the barcode.
Over the barcode.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So me being me, I just took my fingernail and scraped it off. My mission, and this was not cheap stuff either. Yeah. This was not cheap stuff. These were very expensive products in this store. So I went around the whole store. Almost all of them had a rating of about 7 to 8. I found some 10s, but there was nothing. I didn't find anything in the entire store of everything that I was playing with that was under a 5.
Wow.
Not one. Not one. So it's powerful. They keep updating the database, but here's the thing. They keep changing. They keep changing the products and saying new and improved. And it's like, yeah, it's the same thing. They just put a new bottle or whatever. So, the EWG is behind, in terms of trying to keep up with the products that keep coming out. So I think, a lot of this is marketing. A lot of it is smoke and mirrors. And plus also, there is no regulation. None. There is no regulation in this country. In Europe, they have a very different standard. They call it the precautionary principle. And you have to prove that whatever the product is has to be non-toxic before you can sell it. So it's a very different standard. So even products that like my stepdaughter is in Germany, okay? And she'll bring home products that are made by the company here in the United States. And you look at the ingredients and it's night and day. Right. Night and day. Because in order to market in Europe, you have to follow their regulations. So it's like, okay, so here in the United States, we get the crap stuff. And over in Europe, they get the good stuff. When did I become a second-class citizen in my own country that I'm not getting the crap stuff from this country or from this company, So anyway, so it's a lot to process, number one. And if anybody's interested, I found a company that the whole company is toxic free. So if you're looking for a choice that you don't have to worry about anymore, message me and I can connect with you, afterwards. But use the EWG, their app, healthyliving.org, and start to take charge and control of your health destiny. I mean, I just found a whole article that was in the Wall Street Journal, and I posted it on the pregnancy Facebook page. And it was all about sunscreens and all the toxins that you're being exposed to. And I remember, when my children were little, especially, for my daughter, my children are very light-skinned. And so I would be literally dipping them into sunscreen, thinking I was doing something good for my children, protecting them from the sun. No, I wasn't. And, now I know better a lot because I've spent so much time and energy learning about these toxins and what they can do to us. So, circling back around to
Yes.
toxic metals, heavy metals in this. So, heavy metal poisoning refers to when you get an excessive exposure like you did, and it can have an effect on normal body functions, and it could occur from the diet, it could occur from the environment, it could occur from your personal care products. So you want to be very, very, very careful about that, because it can enter the skin or enter your body through your skin, which is the biggest organ, but it could also be by inhalation, but also by ingestion. Okay. And going back and circling back to the fillings. Okay. I had a very progressive chemistry teacher who, when you think about the metal fillings, and it's about people that are our age, the kids that are now going to the dentist, teenagers, they're not going to have to worry about this issue, but it's people our age that are like 57, 50, 60, somewhere in there, that we used to get mercury fillings when we were kids. And so they use the mercury as a mixing agent because it's a liquid at room temperature. So they would use nickel or silver and mix it, heat it up and get it into almost a paste. And then they would push it in. Now, the good news is that these things lasted forever. Seriously, that was a really good material, and you could not ever have to have that replaced for the rest of your life. The problem was that at each time you brush your teeth, each time you chew, you were releasing mercury each time. So my husband, and it's a neurotoxin, as you mentioned, and it definitely has an impact on people for MS. So they're talking about that being one of the possible issues or causes in that is mercury toxins. So my husband was diagnosed with MS. And when we first got married, I don't know how we were talking about MS and toxins, and I don't know. And he said, well, how do I know if I have them? And I said, just open your mouth. He had 9 of them fillings. And I didn't even finish looking in his mouth. I'm already on the phone to the dentist. And so we planned over the next 3 months, I think it was, he had 9 fillings. So we did 3 at a time. And there is as you mentioned, because you're being exposed, when you're taking this out, you're being exposed to high amounts. So they have a lot of techniques now that can help you to make sure that you are not getting a toxic load of mercury. So they have definite protocols. So if that's something that you still do have those, my chemistry teacher told us, when I was in college, as soon as you can, get them out. So that was my first job. I actually had very good dental benefits. So I went through and had all of mine taken out and replaced. They didn't have the protocols that they do today because we really didn't know how bad it was, but I did it, and, I'm still alive. I haven't died. But, if you're going to do that, I strongly recommend to make sure that you find a doctor who knows about the toxins and knows about the protocols to take out mercury from your body successfully. And I think back to when I was a kid, I used to break open mercury thermometers, and play with it.
Right.
I loved playing with mercury. Mercury was so awesome to play with. And my mother would be going around the house going, have you seen the thermometer? Nope. Nope.
The other, before we end, I just wanted to say something else about lead, because you mentioned about paint chips and in the soil from the lead, but also lead. We were talking about how toxins get stored in your fat, but they can also be stored in your bones. And heavy metals can get stored in your bones, and lead gets stored in the bones. So I know that what's been very popular recently is bone broth.
Right. I forgot about that.
What? Yes. So bone broth can be very heavily laced with these metals that leach out of the bones, especially lead. And Dr. Greger also does have a video on lead in bone broth. So I would never recommend bone broth to anyone. If you want to make a broth, you make it with vegetables and you get all the good stuff from it, and it should be organic as well. But you definitely have to worry, because there's certain times in your life when you may be leaching, you may be leaching these toxins from your bones. One time is when you're pregnant, if you're not getting enough calcium, which is why we really do make sure that you're getting enough calcium through your diet, so you don't have to get it from your bones and then degrade your bones so that you're leaching your toxins that might be there out into your bloodstream. And also in menopause, when you're losing bone, that's another time that you might be, if you've been accumulating toxins, heavy metals in your bones, that's another time if you're not getting adequate calcium and maintaining your bone strength, then you might be leaching them out. So I just wanted to put in a little word that bone broth is not your friend. There's no reason. If friends are eating bone broth, then you can just warn them about heavy metals and especially lead.
But even still, and this is just diverting off topic, but any kind of the broths that you get that are commercially prepared are going to be extraordinarily high in sodium. Even the ones that say low sodium are still going to be really, really high in sodium. So it's just best, make your own. It's so easy to make your own broth. And I've got a good, recipe for restorative broths that, again, part of our program is teaching you how to change your health destiny for yourself and for your children. Because when you start to go breastfeed, breast milk is made up of a lot of fat. And guess where those fats are coming from? You. Guess what's in your fat? All these toxins. So you're dumping about a third of your toxin load to your baby when you breastfeed. So it's something, and I see the direct impact in the classroom on our children. So, as a former teacher of 35 years, I just stepped out of the classroom not too long ago, but I saw it in our kids. And this is one of the reasons why. This is, for me, one of my biggest reasons why, is because I want healthier children. I want smarter kids. I want kids who don't have health issues. And we have to change it before you get pregnant. So, or if you're having trouble conceiving, that's another point.
No, I mean, this is why we did it. And it's because the more we learn about it, the more we felt that it was really, it was tragic to think about this explosion of obesity and explosion of diabetes. And I've been learning that some of these endocrine disrupting chemicals are actually predisposing babies and children for obesity and diabetes later on in life, and endometriosis and fibroids and all the things, and early menarche and all these things, or early breastfeeds, all these things that we're concerned about. So the only way to really fix it for the next generation, and makes the next generation healthier, and the one after that, is to reach women before they conceive, so they can get healthier themselves and produce healthier children. And that's what the Pregnancy Advantage is really about.
You're right. You are 100% right. And we have a gift for you. So it's what Debra and I think are the top 3 things that you should be working on and focusing on to get your body pregnant ready. You can find that at pregnantready.net. Okay. Join us. We are very big on helping you to get the toxins out, to switch your diet and exercise. You can't get around those 3. So those are the 3 big pieces,
And reduce stress and sleep. Yes. It's lifestyle medicine plus the reduction in toxin exposure.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. So we will see you back. We're going to continue this on our theme. We're going to be doing this for next several weeks on toxins. And August 13th, I think it's 13th, if I can't remember.
Yes.
Dr. Neil Barnard's coming on.
Right.
So I'm really excited about that.
Yes. So
all right.
All right. Oh, you know what? Wait, next week, just so we can talk. Next week, I'm going to be at the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine has an international conference on nutrition and medicine. I'm going to be on that. I think it starts a little late in the afternoon, so I think we'll still be able to do it, but I'll check the time.
All right. Very good. Well, Debra, always a pleasure connecting with you.
Yes, and with you. Thanks very much. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.